This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Welcome to the Young Wealth Show, where you'll truly learn how to make, spend, and invest money for an awesome life. Get the real-life stuff that wasn't part of your school curriculum. Young Wealth gives you innovative new ways of dealing with your finances, as well as the skills and tools you're going to need to survive and be successful out on your own. Let the Young Wealth Show be your GPS to take you from clueless to clued in. Here's your host, Jason Hartman, with Young Wealth.
It's my pleasure to welcome Evan back. We've got a few big topics to talk about today. We're going to talk about the Rentier Class. We're going to talk about people getting too dang greedy. We're going to talk about the big corporate tenants that don't want to pay their commercial landlords rent or don't want to pay the contracted rent. And we're going to talk about Florida's A grade, getting an A for effort in their coronavirus reopening strategy, and more. Evan, welcome back.
Jason, it is wonderful to be with you as always. So much going on, even though we're at home. It's nonstop action and work to do. You
know, I have been completely, puzzled, envious, I'm not sure what, by people saying, well, you know, everybody's just sitting at home like they're not doing it. I'm so busy.
No. Yeah.
If I wasn't sitting at home, I don't know how I'd get anything done. I mean, I need to be sitting at home right now. There's just way too much going on.
There is. You know, and this is the time. I think you've said this, that, you know, good times make millionaires, recessions make billionaires. Now, I don't know, you know, you don't need to be a billionaire.
Let me get you the exact quote. Yeah. Recessions make millionaires. Depressions make billionaires.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that actually really is true, because the world's first billionaire, J. Paul Getty, became a billionaire by buying cheap oil companies during the Great Depression, not recession, depression. And, you know, the bad economic times always create monumental opportunities. And you know, we've talked about it. Look, we've talked about Joseph Schumpeter, my favorite economist, and creative destruction. And we've talked about how, like, the whole thing that was coming at us in 5, 8, 10 years is here sooner because we were forced to do it. Necessity is the mother of invention. Everybody in the world now suddenly knows how to use every teleconferencing technology, whereas before they were resisting it. And now that is making my quote from 2012, Evan, more meaningful than it's ever been. And what was that quote? Let me remind you. Location is less meaningful than it's ever been in human history.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And now, even more so. And so people are just going to be fleeing to quality of life areas. Like I talked about, John Nesbitt, the author of the Megatrends books in the 80s, said his big technology, why he could live in Telluride, Colorado, a beautiful ski resort, and didn't need to live in a city. Yeah, it's a great place. And he didn't need to live in a city, was because of technology enabled that opportunity. And the big technology was, listeners, Federal Express.
But I don't want people to misunderstand what you're saying. You're saying location, but you're still saying location is important. But it's not like you're saying that being in downtown Chicago or downtown New York isn't important if you want to have a successful career and for those kind of business contexts. The fact the location is somewhat more important to be in a low density area, that is actually becoming more attractive. The conventional understanding of the importance of location, you know, being on the coast, you know,
in a city.
that's not doesn't have the value it once had.
Right. You know, absolutely. You clarified it. Thank you for doing that. And I would say, if you think you need to be in a place where you can get paid more for your career, if you need to be in Silicon Valley, New York City, San Francisco, any of these expensive areas that were the areas that really were the centers of the world forever, really, pretty much, right? Or at least since industrialization.
Why on earth would anyone want to live in San Francisco right now, unless that was the only place you could live? It's so expensive. It's dangerous. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah. No, I'll say it this way. No es necesito. Okay, Carmen can correct my bad Spanish. Okay, my gringo Spanish, but she's probably listening. And her mom, our new listener, who I answered that question, hopefully, about, newbies. You can invest, but you got to have a little buffer right now, a little bigger cushion. We don't want you coming to us saying, I just saved up my last dollar. I've got enough for the down payment and closing cost. I'm ready. No, you're not. No, you're not. Go somewhere else because we don't want your money. Your money's no good here. You got to have a cushion right now. Okay. It's times are a little uncertain, obviously, but I think there's great opportunity. So if you've got that buffer, that cushion, you should be buying up stuff like crazy right now. This opportunity is good. And we all see this. You know what? In 5 years, Evan, everybody's going to say, I was listening to Jason and Evan talk about this mass migration to the quality of life areas, to the suburbs, out of the cities. And that was like 20 million moves ago.
Yeah.
And now
so true.
The prices have all gone up in the places that used to be cheap, and they've gone down in the places that used to be expensive. And I'm not saying
I remember you talking once recently about how you were going to buy a whole bunch of mobile home parks 5 or 6 years ago, and you thought they were too expensive. And now
2011. That was 9 years ago. Yeah. And I thought they were too expensive. Now, I did fortunately buy one, and that's been a great investment. And by the way, it's interesting because that property has a restaurant, and we've always been debating, do we keep the restaurant? Should we get rid of the restaurant? And now that decision has become much easier. So coronavirus made our decision for us. We're definitely getting rid of the restaurant. And by the way, this mobile home park it's like a little bit of a resort. It's got like a beach area. It's got, boat docks and jet ski docks. It's waterfront on the river. And we're building some kind of modular single-family homes. They're nice, by the way. They're really nice. And so we're doing that on the waterfront area, getting the mobile homes out of that waterfront area. And we can build 3 where the restaurant is.
That's great.
My partner is a client, Steve. Many of you met him at our Meet the Masters event or maybe some of our other events. So that's what we're going to do. So that decision became very easy, a la Corona. So
the other thing, in terms of depression creating billionaires, and I think I have really noticed, how Warren Buffett said, when the tide comes in, you can see who's swimming naked, or when the tide goes out. Yeah. You can see which businesses and which leaders are really creative and can really adapt to the times and who really has the best interest of the customer. I guess that this was a topic we were going to talk about, greed. You see which leaders and which companies adapt, serve, figure out a way to thrive in difficult circumstances, and which just can't, which are just paralyzed and they don't know what to do. And I think that's the people who have that insight, that creativity, that hard work ethic. Yeah. That's who survives, and then they make more money in the long run.
And it's the old metaphor of look at the trees that survive a big storm. I live in Florida, right? What trees survive a hurricane and which ones fall over, right? The ones that bend with the wind, that are flexible, they survive. And that, you've got to be adaptable in an environment like this, or really in life in general. You've got to be adaptable, and you've got to not put too terribly much stock in whatever's going on. There's a great quote I like, and forgive me if I get this wrong, but it was like, in matters of fashion, go with the wind. In matters of principle, stand like a rock. Okay. And so that's the way to do it. So, it doesn't mean sacrifice ethics or principles. No. But when it comes to just, some things you should just kind of be easygoing about and go with the flow, and other things you should stand your ground and be really firm about them, So
there's a wonderful store here in Chicagoland called Apt, ABT, which is sort of like a Best Buy, but infinitely better. And they have this sign all around the store that says, the answer to any reasonable request is yes. And I think that creates this ethic of, we're going to figure out a way to make it work. Now, we're not going to give you this for free, but we will figure out ways to meet your needs. And I think that's a great attitude.
Yeah. Well, hey, we got a bunch of stuff to go through, Evan. And, that's like the customer's always right. If the customer's wrong, see rule number 1.
That's good.
Yeah. So we got a bunch of stuff to go through. Let's talk first about the Rentier Class. And I believe that's the way that's pronounced. Mm-hmm. And you said that came from my, not my favorite economist, but what I say is the most influential economist, right?
Right. Karl Marx.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
my least favorite economist, but the most influential.
Oh, for sure the most influential. I mean, we saw it in the Soviet Union, but he was critical of the Rentier class, and in many ways rightfully so, because these were people that essentially their land was worked by serfs and they collected the profits. And people lived, miserable lives supporting the landowners. And the landowners, they didn't earn the land, they just inherited it. Mm-hmm. And there was no social safety net back then. So people were suffering and it helped create this revolution. But he was so critical. What he missed is all the good things that private property does for people. It forces you to be efficient with your land when there's incentives and so forth. But yeah, he created that term.
Well, it's really interesting, and we think all of our listeners should aspire to be part of the Rentier class, okay? Now,
but we don't want them to be lazy. We want them to keep working.
Not like that. But Karl Marx and Bernie Sanders will probably still not like you, okay? So, and they're pretty much cut from the same cloth, and Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden aren't too far behind. But anyway, the concept is that, look, there's this age-old debate and battle between what is the value labor brings to anything, any endeavor, and what is the value capital brings. So capital is money, of course, but it's also land. Land is capital, or equipment is capital. And then there's labor, the people that come and work on the assembly line, make the widgets, work the land, farm the land, right? And so our society forever has been trying to figure out how to apportion the rewards correctly to each of those classes. And what's interesting is that you, as a Jewish rabbi, probably have a lot to say about this, because there's a whole biblical thing about, Jesus and the money changers and the Jews versus the Christians. And then the Muslims have some interesting stuff to say about this too, because Muslim culture, there's halal banking and they don't allow interest, but they've found ways around it. And forgive me, by the way, Muslim listeners, I'm no expert on this at all. I've read a little bit about it.
There are always ways around it.
Yeah. They basically found ways to lease things rather than sell them with interest, right? So, what do you have to say?
In Jewish law, there's something called the sabbatical year, which is every 7 years you're supposed to forgive all debts.
Yeah.
And 2,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, the leaders of the Jewish community said that is impossible to carry out. Essentially, then no one would ever loan money, especially as you get close to the Jubilee year. If there's a 6th year, so what they did was they said during the 7th year, the debt is transferred to essentially an escrow. They called it the Beit Din, which is a legal court. And you continue to pay your interest to the Beit Din, to the escrow, for an entire year. And then the escrow goes back to the owner. So they said, we're not going to change God's law. This is God's law, but we are going to adapt God's law to our time. And, it's interesting. We talk about the Rentier class. For most of history in Europe, Jews were not allowed to own land. That's one of the reasons that many Jews became bankers, because they could loan money, but they couldn't own land, and essentially created a different source of passive income, if we want to think of it that way.
And that was also the reason so many Jews went into the professions.
Yes.
Because they couldn't get jobs, and so they had to go out and hang out their own shingle, if you will. And so, they really focused on education and getting into the professions. So it's interesting, but I don't understand that Jubilee thing that you would pay on the 7th year when you should have a sabbatical. You kept paying. So what's the Jubilee?
Because it never happened. It was just essentially, it was never followed, because the rabbis said, if we follow it, we'll destroy economies. No one will ever loan money. So they would so let's say I owed you, $100 a month. During the 7th year, you would transfer my obligation to a bank instead of yourself. So I would continue to pay the bank. And then after the 7th year was over, it would go back to you. So you weren't holding the debt on top of me. So they essentially, that was the way of getting around the law.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
But they were smart to get around it, because if that law was enforced, I mean, there's a whole argument in the Talmud about this, that it would actually hurt poor people because no one would ever loan money.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah.
See, you've got to have capital formation.
Yes.
So that money can be lent, so that it can find it. Look at farmland has to be financed before it can provide food. This is where Karl Marx went totally wrong, and Bernie Sanders is totally wrong.
Totally wrong.
Yes, there needs to be a balance, and you've got to, hopefully the free market can apportion the rewards. And the reason things are so messed up today is that we've moved away from the free market. At least that's my argument. We don't have enough of a free market. And that's the reason we have these like winner take all giant corporatocracy running the world, is because it's too hard for a small company to get capital, and it's too easy for a big company to get capital.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So you've put up all these barriers to raising money through the public markets, i.e. the stock exchange. And of course, the only people who can play the game are the people that can afford the compliance. And that's why you don't have enough competition.
Horrible.
Yeah, it is.
Did you see that there was a movement when AOC was talking about Amazon not paying any taxes?
Such an idiot. But I'm also upset about Amazon not paying taxes at the same time.
But somebody said, well, she was just explaining it. So she said Amazon pays no taxes, at all. Which I mean, because they reinvest so much, and they still pay, their employees pay taxes and so forth. But
but they've also got a bunch of scams going on too. So,
she got her degree in economics at BU, and there was a movement to have BU withdraw her degree because she clearly didn't learn anything in economics. There was a whole petition.
That would be great. I would love to see that. That'd be awesome. Very good.
It's complicated. I think some of the economic things, and we've talked about this, you've taught us about this, are counterintuitive. I mean, Keynesian economics is counterintuitive in many ways, but in some way, even what we're going through right now is counterintuitive. To constantly throw money. But there are certain things. What did Keynes say? In the long run, we're all dead. So we kind of have to worry about the short run and make sure we can get through these times. And it doesn't seem right.
Keynes was a very influential economist also.
Yes.
Maybe, I don't know if he'd be the second most influential, but he's right up there. And he's not completely wrong. It's just that in my opinion, it's gone overboard. Government spending, as Keynes said, Keynes' concept was prime the pump. You need to make the pump work. Most people won't understand this, but listen, I lived on a farm for quite a while. And if you have a well, to make any pump work, you've got to, the gaskets won't be tight if you don't put some water in there. So you got to prime the pump with some water to make it start to work. And that was the Keynesian concept of, priming the pump, right? And so, that's not completely wrong, but of course it goes overboard. Let's take a bit of a recess on this. And we got to get to some of those current event things too, but understanding the concept of economic rent, being in the Rentier class, as investors, as landlords, remember what I've said before, folks, that it is truly incredible that you can essentially have a whole bunch of tenants, and I'm going to call them partially indentured servants. Boy, if AOC was listening to this, she would have my head for saying that, right? But here's what I mean, and I've said it before, is that, think of it, when someone goes to apply to rent one of your houses from you, you will not want to go over a 33 to maybe a maximum of 40% rent to income ratio. That means that you basically own their labor for 10 to 14 days of every month. All of it goes to pay for the house they rent from you. That's a pretty great deal, Rentier class. I'm talking to you folks listening, right? It's an awesome deal, and you ought to sign up for as many of those deals as you possibly can, and you can find them at jasonhartman.com. shameless plug. Okay.
You should.
You should. Let's listen to a little audio clip on this about economic rent. This is from Investopedia, and I think it's a good overview, and it'll give us a little fuel to talk about this before we get to our current events.
Economic rent represents money paid or made in excess of the expected amount. Economic rent typically occurs when a product, service, or property is in short supply, but demand is high. Scarcity and exclusivity are common conditions of economic rent. A gifted basketball player provides an exclusive talent that's scarce, even within the ranks of professional sports. While he expects to be paid $10 million a year for his services, the team that signs him offers $13 million. The extra $3 million is the athlete's economic rent. A clothing business wants to open a shop on exclusive beachfront property where only one vacant space remains. The site sees plenty of foot traffic and offers ample opportunity for a business to prosper. The property owner expects to charge $10,000 a month. As others contemplate the location, the owner of the clothing business offers $11,000 a month to help her secure the exclusive spot. The extra $1,000 each month the property owner collects represents economic rent. The clothing business could spend that extra $1,000 on employee raises or other investments, but it's an opportunity cost it's willing to spend to get such a desirable property. If market conditions were perfect, economic rent would not exist because competitive pressures would drive prices down. Economic rent also explains the high value of intangible assets such as patents and permits. The term should not be confused with rent, which simply refers to payment for the temporary use of an asset or property.
So I just thought that would be helpful in the discussion because, you know, look at my regular listeners. If you've been listening to me for the last 15 years or following me for the last 16 years doing this, you know that I've moved around a little bit and I've tried to find the perfect place where I want to live. And so I lived in Orange County for 25 years, most of my adult life. And then I moved and I lived in Arizona for 6 years. I lived in Las Vegas for 1.5 years, and now I live in Florida. And as I look around, and I've looked at many cities, I thought about moving to Austin, Dallas, many, many places. And as I look around and I go to these different cities, I'm also doing a laboratory experiment for all of you listening, not just looking for my own home. I'll look at houses, I'll look at apartments, I'll look at everything. And it amazes me how homes, whether they be apartments or single-family homes, how they have this just natural, incredible scarcity built into the equation. And when you buy a property, you are buying a super scarce, unduplicatable asset. Okay? There is no, just like there is no other person exactly like you. You are completely unique. I can hear Katy Perry singing in the background. Firework, right? That song.
Jason, you know what else? That video reminded me of a story that you've told on the podcast a couple of times about a restaurant. If I remember correctly, it's in Palm Springs that you went to. And you said it's been different places or different restaurants, and yet you think the whole time the guy who owns the building is still collecting rent from whoever is in that building. Does that story ring a bell?
Palm Springs.
I think so. You were talking about how you went to this place once 30 years ago and then you went back and the building's still there. It's a different restaurant, but the same guy probably is still collecting rent.
Oh, yeah. It might be the same owner. Yeah. In other words, the names change, the restaurants go in and out or the whatever goes in and out, but the property remains very constant. Yes. And that's one of the great things about it. Yeah, no, absolutely true. So
just acquire it.
Yeah, it's such a great asset class because it just has natural scarcity built into the equation. And no, I'm not going to say the Will Rogers quote, although it's true, buy land, they're not making any more of it. Yeah, but the fact is there's a lot of land. The point is the commodities and the zoning requirements and the cost of construction. And, it's just complicated. It's hard to duplicate real estate. And you're a unique person. Everybody's a unique person. And guess what? Every property is unique. And it cannot be replaced ever. So you just have a natural scarcity built into all of the houses you own. So that's a beautiful, wonderful thing. So congratulations, listeners. Most of you listening are probably in the Rentier class. If you're not, reach out to us, jasonhartman.com, 1-800-HARTMAN will help you get into the Rentier class.
That's right.
And you can charge rent and live off those rents. Okay, we got a couple articles we got to discuss, Evan. Let's go lightning round on those.
We got a lot. But what did you make, Jason, about this article from the Wall Street Journal about companies like Starbucks that are doing just fine, even in this coronavirus shutdown? You know, at least by my house, the line to get into Starbucks is around, it's like the whole parking lot.
Really? Even now? Huh?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, the drive-through line. The drive-through line is, every time I drive past it.
I never go to drive-thrus, yeah.
Well, right now.
Now that's all they have, yeah.
Right, that's right. And they're asking for rent reductions, even though they're doing fine.
That's ridiculous.
What do you make of that?
Yeah, they're just opportunistic, and they're looking to take advantage of the landlords. But I wouldn't want to be a commercial property landlord right now. That's for darn sure. And by the way, the rent performance on the single-family homes is quite good. I mean, It is really quite good. By the way, folks, share your experience, listeners. Please go to jasonhartman.com/ask and tell us what's going on with you. So far as we have seen, this is anecdotal and we're only really 2 months in, people are all getting their rent. I mean, I haven't heard of any big problems of any significance that are abnormal. You're just going to naturally have tenants that don't pay sometimes. I mean, that's just being a landlord. Right. But in the middle of the pandemic, we just haven't heard of any issues with rent collection.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Okay, in this next article, I know this could cause a big tangent because we would love to talk about this forever.
Tangent alert.
This is an important article from CNBC. After trying for a decade, central banks might succeed at generating inflation.
Well,
now you've been right about a lot of things, but inflation has not gone as much as we thought it would.
You know what? I'm going to say I've been really wrong about interest rates, but I have not been wrong about inflation. Look, we have had inflation. It just, by the way, I said this on a recent episode that you haven't heard yet, Evan. I know you haven't heard it because it's just going up today. So we have not had as much inflation, compared to what is always the question.
Yes. Compared
to the amount of money creation, inflation has been low. And what that goes to show you is that the U.S. is in a really enviable position vis-a-vis the rest of the world. We've got the reserve currency. We've got the military to keep it that way. We've got all these special privileges, which kind of suck for everybody else. I'll be the first to agree with that. But for the U.S., it's great. And, the question is how, you listen to the Peter Schiffs of the world and all the doom and gloomers, and they keep saying everything's going to collapse. The dollar's going to collapse.
Yeah.
We can't have this much debt. You can't run deficits like this. I disagree. I think they can keep kicking this can down the road for a long, long time. But inflation is definitely there. Divide it between consumer prices and asset inflation. Divide it based on how you're definitely spending. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own personal inflation rate. And also look at the fact that there has been real inflation. It's not that much compared to money printing. I agree completely. And it's also understated. If you look at shadowstats.com versus the consumer price index, we all know it's fake.
Yeah.
So, but now, oh my God. I mean, we've never seen money printing like this, and we've never seen a Federal Reserve chair that he makes no bones about it. Jerome Powell makes no apologies. It's like, we're going to create more money than ever before in human history, and who cares?
Well, I think part of this reflects, you said this right away, you might have been the first to say it, that Trump is our first real estate president. Yeah. And real estate investors, we love inflation.
Yeah, we do.
So he probably has like-minded people. I mean, Mnuchin. And so I think that it's definitely part of the policy. It's a good policy. As you said, inflation's a great policy for government. It's a great way of dealing with debt.
Oh, it is. Listen, that is their business plan. The central banks and governments around the world, not just the U.S., their business plan, every single one of them is inflation, because inflation reduces their debt, and they all love to spend, and it's a great deal. It really is a great deal.
Yeah.
The same way it is for real estate investors. So align our interests with the powers that be, and we're all going to win.
That's right. Yeah. That was another article that we talked about that I sent to you where Mnuchin is saying we can borrow trillions of dollars because the interest rates are so low. And I said, that's what we want our clients to do on a slightly smaller scale. We're not talking about trillions. We're talking about tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands. But borrow because you're going to be making, as some of our pro formas would say, over 30% annual returns, and you're borrowing money at 4%. I mean, what an incredible differential.
Unbelievable, yeah. It's truly an amazing opportunity. Income property is the most historically proven asset class in the world. It's the most tax-favored asset class in America. Folks, you're just not going to beat it. You're not. And you have a guide in Jason and in his team, all of us who can help you along the way. A guide is somebody who has experience in themselves. And I listened to Jason and I bought properties, and it's been incredible for me. And, in a Rentier Class, I work very hard at my job, and I love my job. But you can't always rely on your job. You have to have other sources of income. And this is the best tax-favored source of income. It's incredible. And as you sometimes teach, Jason, sometimes we don't see the benefits right away, but we see them when we get our tax returns. And you see how just incredibly efficient it is. Right. You don't see all the benefits right away. It's like that iceberg. Most of it is below the surface. And people don't know how to do the math when it comes to income property. Most don't. You do. And hopefully all of you listening have gone to jasonhartman.com. You've watched that free video on the front page on how to analyze a real estate investment. That will really, really help you understand in 27 minutes how to be a great investor. So that's there for you. Yeah, good stuff. Evan, I think there was one more, right?
Let's see. We got so much to talk about.
Yeah.
Yes. Reopenings.
Yes.
That Florida, you're in Florida. Yeah. I'm in Illinois. Very different. Although, to be honest with you, the governor of Illinois, his wife and children are at their $12 million working farm in Florida. It's incredible. So, Governor Pritzker's family is in Florida while he's here. Okay. And very different
point I got to make. Politicians, even if they don't own income property, they're rentiers. Okay. And you can see why the Rentier class was resented, because rentier is another word for saying elitist. Okay.
Yes.
But the difference is, those are elitists that don't deserve it. They did not earn that. Yes, of course, they got elected, right? I get it. Right. But they abuse their power. And that's why they're so resented. Okay? So it's different than you as an income property owner. You've earned it. Okay? So
what about Bernie Sanders? We're going to go on a tangent, but he was kicked off a commune for not working hard enough. And now he owns 3 houses.
That, but it doesn't surprise me. Somehow they go into Congress and they're just ordinary people without much money, most of them. Some are wealthy, of course. But they sure end up wealthy somehow. I don't know how that magically happens with their, $190,000 a year salary. Somehow they just get magically rich when they become a congressman or a senator. It's amazing. It's amazing. Truly amazing. Anyway, Florida's opening.
This article was, Florida's opening. Illinois is shut, and it's, going to stay. Governor Pritzker has essentially said, I'm probably going to extend. He's signaled that he wants to extend the shelter in place right now. No restaurants are open. And they're just very different approaches. Now, I'm not sure which one is right, but a lot of what I've been reading lately is that Florida is doing very, very well.
I'm really, and I think most people listening are starting to agree that a lot of this has been a big sham. We've been hoodwinked, folks. Coronavirus is certainly real. I'm not wearing a tinfoil hat. I think you should take precautions. It's a real thing. There's no question about it. Okay. But is the cure worse than the disease? That's the question we have to ask us. Look, people die every day from suicide, from car accidents, from the regular flu, from everything. And no, this is not the regular flu. This is more significant. There's no question about that. But is the reaction the proper reaction? Probably not in most places.
Probably not. I think the more we learn, it really hit nursing homes and the elderly extremely hard. Yeah. So that's what Florida has actually done really well, that the percentage of deaths in nursing homes in Florida compared to New York is just incredible. I think it was like 1/6 of the number.
Well, when I talk about in my pandemic investing presentation, which, by the way, you are going to get if you attend the virtual Meet the Masters. Yes, we're doing Meet the Masters virtually.
Yes.
And we figured we may not get a chance to do it this year, so we got to do it virtually like everything else. But I think it's going to be awesome. I'm super excited. And you're going to get the pandemic investing presentation. But one of the elements I talk about, Evan, one of the 6 lifestyle mega trends is multi-generational living. And we're going to talk about how investors can profit from that dramatically. It's a big part of it. It's going to be great. And the assisted living, the nursing home stuff has been just tragic. It really has.
And I think, to the broader question, I do think this many of our investors, our investors tend to invest in red states compared to blue states because of the more landlord-friendly laws, cheaper housing. And, I was just having a conversation with my wife where she said, Evan, if they don't reopen the schools, we might have to move to Florida. Now, I have a wonderful job and I love Chicago. I love the city. So I don't really think that's much of a reality, but it just showed for people who can live anywhere. I mean, why wouldn't they want to be in a place where, there's some functioning economy rather than being forced to sit in place? Well, I think that's a real danger.
In a left-leaning state, you're always going to have the politicians and the government doing everything they can to try and make people more dependent on them and less self-sufficient, because dependency is what brings you votes and keeps you in power. And that's just the law of, the world. That's the way it works. So you're going to see the right-leaning states that are more landlord-friendly, that have better properties, that have they're business-friendly, they're just better in every way, and they're the places we invest in. You're going to see those places more likely to help people get back to work and get back in business. And there may be some additional infections, but there will be fewer suicides, less domestic violence, less alcoholism, less people going bankrupt. I mean, you don't know the cascade of problems this leads to.
Big problems.
It's terrible.
And then I think it also backfires in the long run, because I think basically if I'm looking at people in my neighborhood and I read between the lines, people are going out. People are violating this. They're doing it in secret. Right. And I think it actually erodes respect for the institutions.
That's true.
When you don't meet the people's needs, so it actually backfires. So then it's like the boy who cried wolf. Then when it actually is something important, people have lost trust in government.
That's certainly true, and you certainly have a bird's eye view into that, being a rabbi and dealing with people in your congregation, and I'm sure you know their innermost secrets many times. So absolutely.
Well, I do, and everyone's concerned. This is scary. This is so much uncertainty, and we talk about how important income property is to becoming part of the Rentier class, but it's also important for having some clarity and security in life. We are living through unprecedented times. And one way people are always going to need a place to live. And so our strategy helps people gain that clarity and stability. It's truly, it can be life-saving for people. I mean, you've gotten testimonials from people who lost their job, but because they had a couple of properties that they purchased from you, they were able to get through it. I mean, it's truly life-saving.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. So folks, we're here to guide you through this crazy time we're living in. You know how to reach out to us, and we're here for you. Evan, we got to wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining me today. And everybody listening, happy investing, and we will talk to you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.